Hey, you've just stepped into the Caring Corner, where life's caregiving challenges meet a whole lot of heart and a dash of sass. I'm Mischelle O'Neal, and I'm here to serve up insights, inspiration, and real life tools to help you navigate caring for your kids and aging loved ones without forgetting about you. Expect everything from time management hacks and emotional wellness strategies to technology tips sprinkled with humor and tenacity. Are you ready? Let's get to it. Hey, and welcome to the Caring Corner. I'm your host and emotional wellness coach, Mischelle O'Neal, and I'm excited to get into this episode of the Caring Corner. Listen, I have a phenomenal guest for you, and you will be blown away. I remember our first conversation, and I was talking to Lalita, and she was telling me some stuff about caregiving and just her understanding, her in-depth understanding, and her story just blew me away. So I know you can't wait to hear our conversation. So before I do that, I want to go ahead and introduce her so that you know who is on this stage today. Now, Lalita Harlem is a dynamic and inspiring speaker, accomplished author, and a true advocate for women and girls empowerment. And as the president of a flourishing nonprofit organization, she passionately leads efforts to provide essential resources and education to empower women and girls across diverse communities. Now, with a deep commitment of fostering positive change, Lilita leverages her extensive expertise to address critical issues facing women and girls today. And through her engaging talks and thought provoking writings, she challenges societal norms, promotes self confidence, and encourages women and girls to embrace their full potential. Lalita's visionary leadership has not only driven her nonprofit to a new height, but also established her as a sought after voice in the field of empowerment and mental health issues. Her impactful presentations resonate with audiences of all ages, igniting a sense of purpose and inspiring actionable change. I am so excited to have her on my stage today. So I'm going to bring her on, but I want to tell you one more thing. Lalita Harlem's dedication to creating brighter future for women and girls shines through her work as a speaker, author, and a tireless advocate. And I see her all over the place. Now, her words and actions serve as a beacon of hope, motivating individuals to join the movement towards a more inclusive and empowered world. Lalita, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me on this stage today.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to be here. I just really appreciate sharing the platform with you as an amazing person, and then as well as the other amazing people that you've had on your platform. So, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I love digging right, diving right in. So we're not going to do all that, platitudes and stuff because I want you to share your story. And can you share with us a pivotal moment in your journey that actually led you to focus on becoming an advocate for caregiving and dementia specifically? How has this shaped your approach to how you deal with things and your philosophy in life?
Yeah, so to get right into it, as you mentioned in the introduction, I focus on empowering women. And so I do that through a number of different ways. And I have to be honest with you, over the past few years, the pandemic, a lot of the women that I was coaching and working with and supporting, there was a common thread that was creeping up, and that was they were now facing caregiving. And there's different terms that they call the generation, but primarily they were now facing having to take care of a loved one with dementia while also taking care of themselves, maybe new in their career or business, and then also having to take care of young children. And so I kept seeing this common thread coming up, and trying to navigate how to help them feel empowered during this journey. And then something happened with me that made it even more personal. And that was my own very loved one. My mom was diagnosed with dementia. And you can teach people and give them the tools, but when you have to face it yourself, that's a whole different dynamic,
Girl.
different story, right?
Hmm.
And so, as I navigated through that journey of finding out what was wrong with my mom, going through the test, doing the research, seeking answers, and then getting trained through the Alzheimer's Association, working in a memory care unit in a assisted living home, I did all these things to really build up my own education so that I could be empowered. But again, I just kept seeing this coming up. More and more women, especially, were being faced with now this new challenge. And so I went to the board and I said, you know what? I know our foundation is about empowering women, but really, I believe the numbers are somewhere around 75 to 85% of the caregivers for people living with dementia are women. And so I said, you know what? Let's just see. I'd love to kind of build a support program for women who are dealing with this particular challenge. And when I tell you, this program took off. So many women from across different backgrounds and diverse and all of that really needed support. They had questions. They needed to talk to someone, and it just blew up. So we are 1 year old in this program, and I just can't. It's such a joy to be able to use the knowledge and education and the connections and resources that I made to help other women who are dealing with this.
Oh, that is amazing. I love hearing that because, through our conversation, I have a heart for these women, and not just, caregivers for dementia, but there are so many different ways that we become caregivers in our lives. And you're right, the amount of women is just staggering. How many women are actually becoming the caregiver,
Yeah,
and I'm not saying men aren't, and I've been talking to quite a few men who are caregivers too, but the bulk of it does fall on us as women.
yeah,
And sometimes it's not just as the mother or the daughter, it's also as the daughter-in-law or the mother-in-law, or the auntie, or there are so
absolutely.
many ways, the stepfather, the stepmother, there's so many ways we fall into this role. And I truly believe it's silent. Most people will not call themselves caregivers, and it's almost like it's a shame, but it's not. Or you think of, when you hear caregiver, a lot of people think of caregivers as the ones that get paid in facilities.
Right.
And it's not. There's actually a difference between caregiver, caretaker, and it's all these things you learn as you start moving through this process.
Yeah.
But these women are not standing up and asking for help, and they're dealing with so much, like, shame, guilt, frustration. And I'm sure you run across it every day, every time that you're at your nonprofit, or when you're just out there talking to people, because now that they know who you are, they're open to those conversations.
Yeah.
So my question is, what are some of the things, because this is what blew me away, y'all. What are some of the things you wished everyone understood when it comes to dementia and being a caregiver of one who suffers with dementia?
So, the very first thing that I have to say, and this is every platform that I'm able to speak on, I share this because often when you take your loved one to the doctor to figure out what's going on, there's different stages of diagnoses. And so when they get the dementia diagnoses, we're finding that it kind of stops there. Most people don't really know what to do after that. And so, one of the first things they do when they join our support groups, our webinars, our workshops, is they want to know, what do I do? And so, I often will say, well, what type of dementia does your loved one have? And that answer varies. Some people are like, well, I think it's Alzheimer's. I don't know if it's Alzheimer's or dementia, or, it's all these different answers. And what it's really, if nothing else, I want people to understand is that getting a proper diagnosis is key. And I use this example over and over again, that if someone came to you and said, I've been diagnosed with cancer, more than likely you're going to ask, oh my goodness, what type, right? And the reason why is because someone with breast cancer is completely different than, say, someone who has colon cancer. There's different treatments involved, different symptoms. And so when you present dementia, my loved one has dementia, that's the umbrella term, right? That really talks about a cognitive impairment, but there's different types of dementia. There's different things that cause dementia related illnesses. So getting a proper diagnosis is key. When your loved one is diagnosed with dementia, you want to fight those doctors and medical professionals to find out what type of dementia your loved one has. Many people are familiar with Alzheimer's. That right now happens to be the number one diagnosed type of dementia. Now, there's probably different reasons for that. The Alzheimer's Association is a very large organization that it's a blessing. It has generated a lot of funding. So they're able to do a lot of research, right? But there's other types of dementia. There's Lewy body, there's frontal lobe, there's a type of Parkinson's that actually causes dementia related illness. So it's important to find out exactly what type of dementia your loved one has, so that then you can find out what's going to work best for them. And getting that information, there's a few steps that you must take. Obviously, is going to the primary doctor, getting that diagnosis. But then you want to go to the neurologist. You really want to get someone who studies the brain to do additional testing to find out what type your loved one is dealing with. There's also blood work that's needed. Many people aren't aware that, for example, a UTI can actually create dementia like symptoms. So you want to get a full blood work panel to just again narrow down what your loved one is specifically dealing with. CAT scans, MRIs, all of those things, cognitive testing. It's a whole gamut of things that you want to make sure you do after you get that diagnosis of dementia. It doesn't stop there.
One of the things I've found out that, and a lot of it has to do, especially those of us who are older, we grew up under the age of you don't ask the doctor questions, or he's the expert, whatever he says goes. Or so, one, we don't seek a second opinion if what we're hearing just doesn't jive with us. And I say, listen to your gut. If it doesn't feel right, I'd ask more questions. But the other thing is, it's okay to have a list of questions to go in there with. Go into the doctor with your questions, and afterwards call the office and tell them you have additional questions or things that you want to ask, and don't allow them to rush you out of that office.
Exactly. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And that's one of the things that our organization actually provides. We have a number of guides that we send out. It's available on our Facebook group as well, that actually say, here are the steps that you want to take, questions, even the types of doctors that you want to schedule appointments with, so that you can really understand. But I'm going to peel it back even more, because I
Go,
think it's worth really sharing this.
please. Yes.
You would think, and you can see, I'm very passionate about this, because my own experience, and I hear countless time and time again the same type of experience. You would think that that you would not have to fight doctors and medical professionals to get this information. The sad reality is that there is a health crisis on our aging population,
Wow.
period.
Mhm.
So getting them to do this additional testing and asking questions and even understanding what medication they recommend and all of that, we have to pull teeth because I hate to say it, but they've given up on the older population. I just went to a conference, as a matter of fact, where an emergency room doctor has put together a whole program to help caregivers understand like how to protect your loved one when it comes to medicine, so that when they come into the emergency room, they don't have to try to guess, well, what's going on? How do I help them? All of that. She shared with us, for example, many people, when they filled out forms, they may have a DNR, do not resuscitate, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, again, I'm just dropping little nuggets because I just hope whoever sees this, if you grab
Girl.
what you can, right?
Yes.
The interesting thing about a DNR, and this was educational for me as well. A DNR often is confused for anything that helps give this person kind of like a second chance at whatever they're in there for, right? So,
Mhm.
for example, a ventilator. Some hospitals will say, well, they have a DNR, so we can't put them on a ventilator.
Mm.
However, a DNR, do not resuscitate, actually only means do not use CPR.
Mm.
If my loved one, if this person that has this DNR does not have a pulse, that's it. But what she shared, and this was the really big takeaway for all of us there, medical bias is a real thing. And when someone comes in there aged, maybe with dementia, and they have that DNR, medical bias in many cases, these doctors don't even try. They will look at that and say, oh, it's nothing we can do because they have a DNR, and assuming you don't know any better.
Wow.
Isn't that sad?
Yes. Yes.
This is why we need the education. That's the biggest thing. We need to be educated when it comes to helping our loved ones with dementia.
Wow. That's what I'm saying. Y'all, you hear her. You hear her. You hear Lolita. She is dropping these bombs. And these are so important. These things that we know. And I'm finding myself, I have two or three members in my family that are suffering with dementia. In fact, I want you to clarify something for me. Dementia. Is it a sickness? Is it what how do they what's the terminology for it?
They typically call it a disease
Okay.
or illness.
Hmm.
Those are typically the common terms that you'll hear for it.
Okay. And I was thinking about that when I was preparing for this, and I was like, is it a sickness? It's kind of like when you have mental health issues. It's like, is it a diagnosis? Is it a disease? You talk about bipolar. Is it
Mhm.
bipolar disease?
Right,
you know
right.
so this came up for me, and I really wanted to understand that and make sure that we taught the right terminology and we use the right terminology, i.e. me. I know you got it, but I wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
I use the right terminology. So this is mind blowing. So now I have another question for you. Reflecting on the challenges, because we talked about the women that you are starting to really embrace. So reflecting on the challenges that women face who balance this generational caregiving with
Mhm,
personal and professional goals, because I know you also deal with professional women.
mhm.
What do you see as a common obstacle when it comes to navigating their personal and professional goals coupled with their new role or their role as a caregiver? How do you suggest,
Ooh.
they navigate through this and overcome some of these challenges?
You know, one of the biggest challenges is guilt. A lot of the women that I'm working with, that are in our support groups, it's guilt.
Mhm.
And guilt on both sides. So if they're working super hard and building this career or building their profession, then they feel guilt that they can't do more for their loved one. Or if they're giving to the loved one, then they feel guilt that they can't do the same at the job. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we're working through with our caregivers is being kind to yourself, letting yourself off the hook. Um, I try to stress so often that this is an unfair disease. It just really is. It's a very unfair illness for both the person who is living with dementia, but especially for the caregivers. And
Mhm.
there's multiple levels of grieving that a caregiver is going to experience.
Oh,
Yes, from first accepting that they have that their loved one now has this illness, watching them change, and the helpless feeling that you have, and then when you have to make certain changes, there's guilt, there's fear. I'll share an experience that was in our support group, our Facebook group,
Mhm.
which we're now over 1,100 people constantly joining, and it's just so beautiful to see everyone supporting each other. And there was a woman who posted that she had to make the decision to go ahead and admit her loved one to an assisted facility memory care.
Mhm.
She was carrying so much guilt. She was just so broken up. And so everyone was supporting her. And I shared with her something that was shared with me one time, not specifically about my situation, but just how someone worked through the challenge.
Mhm.
And they likened it to a parent, and a parent who knows that their child needs a surgery, maybe it's tonsils removed or something else, right? Now,
Mhm.
as a parent, you're like, I'm going to do everything I can for my child, right? Whatever they need, I got it, right? But
Mhm.
you know, as a parent, you can't do the surgery. So
Mhm.
what do? You seek out the best surgeon out there. You know your child may not understand. Your child may be mad at you because they're experiencing this pain, but you're doing what you know you have to do. One, because you're not skilled to do it. Two, you know it's what's best for your child. But when
Mhm.
our loved ones start that decline due to dementia and dementia related illnesses, they're very much becoming like a child. And
Mhm.
so, as hard as it may be, that role for us is now to do for them what they had to do for us. We have to sometimes do the uncomfortable thing that we know is beyond our skill set, but that is best for our loved one. And she was so encouraged by that. And other ones were like, I needed to see that. So, just again, to kind of go back to your question and the answer to that, it's the guilt. But the more we can support each other and remind each other and remind ourselves, it's an unfair circumstance that we're in and we're doing the best we can, some of that guilt can go away.
And I think one of the things about that guilt is when we're in a community like this, when we're around other people who are going through some of the same things that we're having or who have experienced it already and can share with us, what it does is it allows us to get away from that feeling of isolation, because we know that no longer are we in this by ourselves, no longer are we alone. And even though our situation may be totally different from the person next to us, because of our lifestyle, our values and beliefs, we know that in some way they are experiencing some of the same things that we're experiencing. So that community for caregiving is so important.
Yeah.
And the thing is helping those the negative, keeping the negative out and helping those with the negative work through that.
Right.
Someone asked me today, they said, how do you deal with when someone is having a hard time um, dealing with their frustration and their anger?
Hmm.
And I said, first of all, they're allowed to feel it. I said, embrace it. You feel it. This is how you feel. This is where I am right now. And even me in everyday life, one of the things I'll do is give me 15 minutes or give me a half an hour. I gotta deal with this. Give me
Yeah.
a minute. And then once I deal with it, I tell myself, okay, no wallowing, move on. And I'm not saying it'll go away. It's not, and it is going to come back. But once you start getting that habit of allowing it to happen and moving through it, it becomes something that you can do in multiple ways in your life. And so, um, with that said, and I think we already answered this, but I still want to touch on it a little bit more. Is we talked about dementia and how it affects the loved ones and the things that we're going to see happen in them. But what are some of the effects that and what insight can you give to the caregiver? And we
Mhm.
did talk about the guilt, but
Yeah.
what other things are you seeing show up and that they should look for before they're too deep in?
So, again, my program is really for the caregiver,
Mhm.
because the amount of stress that a caregiver experiences. Again, at this workshop I was just at, the emergency room doctor shared the statistics, and I don't want to misquote it, but it
Mhm.
was very high statistics of the caregivers who basically end up either passing away before their loved one with dementia, or having very severe health issues because they're in just go mode. They're trying to fix, they're trying to help. So my biggest advice, my biggest encouragement, you have to take care of you. And that's so cliche, right?
I
Any
know.
right, any role that involves taking care of someone else, again, whether it's a parent, whether it's caring for a loved one with dementia or dementia related illnesses, it's cliche, but it is the answer. You have to take time for yourself. You have to get away. You have to create a support team. And I say create because even in family dynamics, it would seem logical that everyone in the family who touches this person that is living with dementia would have the same level of interest in caring
Mhm,
for them.
mhm.
But that is not the case. And for a lot of different reasons. People are just different, people, family roles, and all of that. So often, what we're finding is as a caregiver, you're going to have to find your own support, your own people that are there to help you, to remind you that you need to take breaks, to even sit with your loved one. I was able to participate in another app called Rune, where they have different experts in the field, whether it's as a caregiver and all of that, answer various questions. And
Mhm.
one of the questions is, how do you get the support, right? And my answer, and this speaks to what we're talking about, is be specific in what you
Right,
need. You have to
right.
be specific. And people will say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Is it anything you need? And what do we often say?
No,
Oh no,
I'm good.
I'm good. I'll let you know. Okay, thank you so much. No, train yourself. Again, remove the guilt. And it doesn't have to be huge things, right? It could be, for example, something like, you know what? When you're out picking up your groceries, do you mind picking up a few things for me? I can cash app you if you want, but I just don't even have the bandwidth to get out, and I just that would really help if you could do that for me, right?
Right,
Give
right.
people specific things that they can do to assist. Maybe it's, you know what, I just really need to take a walk around the block. But my
Mhm.
loved one is sundowning right now, and if you're watching this and you have a loved one with dementia, you probably know what that means during a
Right,
certain time of
exactly.
day.
Mhm,
It
mhm.
it can get really a lot of changes can happen. So you might say, you know what? Yes, there is something you can do.
Mhm,
Between 5 and 6, could you just come over and maybe just kind of sit with my love? I just need a little quiet time,
mhm, mhm.
right? Those are the things that you can take the power back. The more power over the situation that you feel like you have, the better you will feel. It will lower your stress, and then
Mhm.
you can build this habit of finding ways to put your needs and yourself first.
And that's one of the things, emotional wellness coach. So that's what
Yeah,
that's what's
I'm
so.
preaching to the choir, right?
Yes, but no, we have the whole congregation out
There
here.
we go.
No, we good. We good.
I love it.
So yeah, but that's the thing is it does sound so trite. And that's why one of the things I focus on is mindfulness, because we can't do anything about the past
Right.
and we can't predict the future,
Right.
but we can take care of the here and now.
Yeah.
And so, and when you practice mindfulness, one of the things about that is your gratitude begins to bubble up.
Yeah.
And so that's, so when you're looking and you're dealing with the present and you're aware of sometimes just sitting there with that loved one, and just something that comes out of their mouth that you wouldn't have, that just, wow, and reminds you why you're there, or
Yeah.
that love that was in your heart. So exactly, taking care of yourself, because what happens is if you don't take care of yourself, you start falling apart. And a lot of times, like you said, they're 100% on go, go, go,
Yeah.
and you're not going to the doctor like you need to. You're
Yeah.
not taking care of the issues, that you're not eating right because you're so busy preparing for them. And it kind of reminds me of being a mom. Remember
Yeah.
when you're feeding that child or that baby and your food gets cold, and then
Mhm.
when you go to eat it, you're like, I don't want this.
Yeah.
And so you're not eating correctly, you're not sleeping because you're worried, or you're watching someone, or you're making sure that someone that's sundowning, that you're there, that you're partially awake, like
Yeah.
again, like a mom, when you're always listening
Yeah.
to make sure nobody gets up in the middle of
Right.
the night,
Yep. Yeah.
So it's all this that's going on. And so you're slowly eroding away, just like the person that you're caring for.
Right.
And
That's
so,
it. That's exactly it.
girl, we could talk forever, but let me no. So, what I want to talk about before we go, could you share one specific strategy or tool or practice that can significantly impact our listeners' quest for balance and emotional wellness in their multifaceted roles?
To specifically, I think what comes to mind is being your own advocate. And however that looks. So that may be having an emotional wellness coach as Mischelle here, right? It may be joining a
Nice plug.
support
No.
group, right? It might be journaling, but I strongly, you have to become your own advocate. That is the biggest thing. That would be my number one. And then the number two thing that I would say, and I know I shared this with you before, but our motto or tagline is that we are making beautiful moments, not memories.
I
And
love that.
to
Yes.
create that shift in your mindset, because it is a shift. We often, we collect pictures, we do all that because we want to have the memories. When we're dealing with our loved ones that are living with dementia, that piece may feel quite removed. But if you
Mhm.
can focus on that moment, whatever stage your loved one is in, there's always a moment where you can create a beautiful moment with your loved one. And if you can shift your mind to think about that, it will do wonders for your own well being.
Oh, I love that, because there are times when you're dealing with someone that with dementia, that for a few seconds or a few moments they become very lucid,
Yeah,
and it just makes your eyes and your heart light up, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
So focusing on that moment, and again, back with mindfulness, being totally in that moment, totally present,
yeah.
and just focusing on that. So I love what you said to me. That just blows me away. So, and I keep saying that. See, our conversation, So, on a more personal note, what's one piece of advice that you wish you had,
Mm.
that you had received earlier in your journey, and how would it have changed your path?
So what's interesting, and I've talked about this before with our loved one, when I first took her to her doctor to just go over some of the things I was observing. The very first diagnosis that she received was cognitive impairment.
Mhm.
And I've gone to a couple of different actual Alzheimer's Association workshops, and they stress this very much. And this is what I wish I knew at the time, because we're trying to be so hopeful, right? We're trying to in our mind think that we're avoiding something that's really really bad. When we hear that diagnosis, oftentimes we minimize it, and
Mhm.
we think, oh well, that's no big deal, we'll just get her out more, we'll spend some more time. And granted, with a diagnosis of cognitive impairment, you can, if you know what I know now, you can begin the process of slowing down what may be coming, right? You can slow
Mhm.
it down. I mean, they've shown even up to like 5 to 10 years
Wow.
slowing it down if
Mhm.
you act then. We didn't know that. So when she got that diagnosis, we really didn't treat it like we should have. And then the pandemic hit. And so here we are, not really understanding that it was kind of like a precursor, right? It's almost like
Mhm.
a doctor saying, well, you're pre diabetic. And a person saying, oh, well, that means I'm good. I'm fine. I can still eat what I want, do what I. No, that's not what that means, right? So it's the same thing. Cognitive impairment doesn't mean, oh, everything is fine and you don't have to do anything. It really means we're seeing signs that impairment is there, and that something is imminent, something is coming, and you
Mhm.
want to start taking action now. That's really what that means. And of course, the doctors aren't telling you that, right? So that would be the advice I would give when you take your loved one, because again, we get that in the group. People are saying something doesn't seem right or they're forgetting
Mhm.
this. You take them to the doctor. If they give them that diagnosis, my advice is that's when you start your process. You want to go in full throttle, like, okay, this is what I know this means. That means, something could be coming. Let's start taking action now. Let's start getting the testing done. Let's start putting things in place, activities, engagement, make sure they're on a structured schedule. Like, you want to start all those things then.
I love that you said that because it reminds me not too long ago. We know this my mom. Now she's not, she doesn't have dementia and she's not diagnosed with dementia, but one of the things is you notice that she's not hearing, and
Mhm.
you're like, she answers, but she answers stuff in a way that you're like, Mom, what do you think I said?
Mhm.
So one of
Mhm.
those things. And we were like, you need to go check your ears. And she kept blowing it off. But when we went to the dentist, I mean, not dentist, when we went to the hearing doctor, one of the things that he said is not being able to hear affects your cognitive skills. And you lose that
Mhm.
as well as your hearing because you're not able to hear the words correctly. And we're
Right.
like, what? And he could tell her exactly, you're down 80%.
Mhm.
But if you get a hearing aid and you can't reverse it,
Right.
but you can make sure it doesn't get worse.
That's it.
And so that same process is what I hear you talking about now is like you said, you can slow it down. Now, in this case, you can't even stop it. It's just gonna happen, but at a slower rate.
That's it.
And I really give that doctor, cahoots because he explained that to us. And so many times, just simple things like that aren't explained to the patient on the other end.
Yeah, yeah. I know one of the VP at the Alzheimer's Association, he even took it a step further and said, when you get that diagnosis of the cognitive impairment, you immediately want to, the things I was talking about earlier, like the blood work and all of that that you get with a dementia diagnosis. He
Mhm.
said, take it a step further with that cognitive impairment diagnosis. Start the process then with the blood work, the CAT scans, the MRIs, and all of that. Because in many cases, what they find is even tweaking their diet, and they have a what do you call it, a slogan or a term that he was using: what's good for the heart is good for the brain.
Wow.
So often, yes, if you can start these changes as early as possible, right, you're going to slow things down. And what does that mean? That means that you get to enjoy more moments with your loved one.
Wow. I love that. And
Yeah.
this has been phenomenal. I could talk to you all day long. I really appreciate it. Don't want to let you go. But but,
Oh.
but because I know there is such a wealth of information. So I want you to tell my audience out there how they can get in touch with you, how they can get involved with your 501, you know, because I know there is such a need for so many of those that I work with, and, you know, so many that are out there and don't even know what's available for them. So go ahead
Mhm.
and tell us.
Sure. So if you go to our website, which the nonprofit website, my nonprofit organization is called My Natural Me. So if you go to mynaturalme.org, you will
Mhm.
be able to then select our dementia caregiver support program, and it'll take you to all the things that we're doing. You could also email me directly at info@mynaturalme.info.
Mhm.
Those are really the two ways. We have again, as I mentioned, a Facebook support group, but I'd rather you go through one of those links because there's tons out there, and I
Right,
want you to
right,
land at the
right.
right place.
Mhm.
But yes, definitely mynaturalme.org. And
And
I
I
just, oh,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
Oh, I just want to say in the My Natural Me, because people say that's such a cool name. Is that because you have natural hair? No. My Natural Me was created because as women, so many times we base our value on what role we have, whether it's a parent, a sister, a friend on the job. And I really wanted to create a space where we
Mhm.
remove all the titles and all the layers and we find out how to love ourselves with all of that gone just at the core. So mynaturalme.org.
Just take that makeup off, girl.
Yes.
I love it. Now, I will be putting all these links down in the comments of this episode. So if you forget it, you know, I will have them there for you. So once again, I want to thank you so much for giving us your time today with sharing your knowledge and your expertise and your wonderful personality with us today. So, you know, thank you for being here on the Caring Corner today. I know this has been a wealth of knowledge for you today, and I hope you take this with you. Remember to go to mynaturalme.org, and I'm sure she has downloads or things there for you to help you. Uh, Lalita, you are such it was such an honor having you on my program, and you are such a beautiful person. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for turning the experience, what you went through, or to advocate and help so many others. And that's one of the things we can do as caregivers is to turn our experiences around to help others who are dealing with in some form or fashion caregiving themselves. So thank you here for being here on the Caring Corner. And until next time, take care. Bye bye. All right, that's a wrap for today at the Caring Corner. We've tackled some big topics, but remember, you're not in this alone. Subscribe to keep the wisdom and warmth coming. And stay tuned for amazing guests who'll be joining us to help round out your caregiving toolkit. Catch you next time and keep conquering those challenges.